Michigan won the Big Ten title a season ago, got over the hump, beat Ohio State, got to the college football playoff, and then just got boat raced. And they remember that. I promise you that taste is very much still in their mouth, and they're looking to right some of those wrongs. Now, it's funny to talk about this because the program last year looks very different than it does this year in terms of personnel. New quarterback, 2 new coordinators, 8 new starters on defense, a lot of newness within this team. But why should a Michigan fan feel better about their chances this year instead of last year? In short, what is the difference between 2021 Michigan and 2022 Michigan? We're going to break it all down for you, starting with the offense, because that's kind of been the most evident thing, especially from a personnel standpoint with J.J. McCarthy taking over the reins after Cade McNamara led him to the college football playoff, led him to a Big Ten title. Jim Harbaugh says, you know what? I think we got to go with the potential guy. I think we got to go with the guy who gives us the best chance to get over that hump. And talk about belief in your guy. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, I feel like Jim Harbaugh knew fairly early on into the season that J.J. McCarthy was going to be his guy. He just needed to let it all play out on the field. Kind of the awkward, hey, we're going to go 3 games and we'll have our starter by then. Like, that was a very bold move by him, but it has paid off in spades. Because think about what Michigan was last year. Bully ball. Hand the ball to Haskins. Let him get downfield and just put his shoulder down and run you over. They did that pretty consistently, and they still kind of did that this year. But here's my thing. When watching Ohio State and Michigan this past Saturday, it was very evident that was the kind of game that you made J.J. McCarthy your starter for. Because think about it, in the first half, Ohio State was stopping the run. They were selling out and just daring J.J. McCarthy and company to make them pay on the back ends. And then 3 40-plus yard touchdown passes later, it was evident, okay, they have that pitch too. And that's the biggest thing. They have now developed and made it very clear they have the counterpunch to what they can do offensively. They are still that same team. The identity is still to run the football and make you pay and move you against your will. That's how they like to play from a tempo standpoint. That's how they like to play from a culture, identity, and attitude standpoint. It's just Michigan football. However, to be able to make you pay when you say, all right, we got to put 8 in the box, well, that's now why Michigan's dangerous. That's why I think you feel better about your chances if you do see a team like Georgia or whoever you draw in the first round of that college football playoff, because you now have the haymaker power to make them pay. And I think that makes them very dangerous the rest of the way. Because we saw against Ohio State, they threw haymakers through the air in the first half and then eventually just wore you down. J.J. McCarthy said it. The pipes eventually burst in the second half. They just wear on you. And through 4 quarters, they're one of the best second-half teams in the country. Through 4 quarters, that weight gets too heavy. They cause you to crumble offensively. So J.J. McCarthy has very much so proven why he is your guy as a starting quarterback for Michigan and has proved Jim Harbaugh right, I think, emphatically. Really quickly, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, would love to have you along for the ride. A ton of the Michigan faithful have already joined the party. We're glad to have you. If you haven't yet subscribed and joined us, no time like the present. No party like a hard count party, because a hard count party don't stop. All right, I'll leave it at that. Also, follow me on the social channels at JD Piquel on Twitter and on Instagram. How about this defense? Last year, 2 NFL stud edge rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, they were coming off the edge with bad intentions. I mean, they just put on a clinic at Ohio State last year. I guess it was in Ann Arbor, but against Ohio State last year, put on a clinic. The sack count last year as a team for Michigan was 34. 25 of those came from Hutchinson and Ojabo, which is great. Like, you'll take that. You'll take having 2 guys just absolutely go off for you in the defensive line. But 8 new starters this year for Michigan. It's a different cast of characters. It's different personnel. It's a different coordinator. Jesse Minter now calling the defense for Michigan. What's different about this team? What's different about this defense, rather, that makes them, I think, a little bit more dangerous than last year? Well, let's just approach it from this angle. Michigan is what they've sort of started to call themselves, like a no-star defense, meaning there's no star player really on this defense. You had Aiden Hutchinson last year. That was obviously a very high draft pick, up for the Heisman Trophy. That's great. But they're arguably a better defense this year from a number standpoint, and they're doing it, I think, more as a unit. More on that in a second. But just look at the sack number. Like I said, 34 sacks a season ago, 25 from Ojabo and Hutchinson. This year, 32 sacks. The sack leader for that defense right now is Mike Morris. He's got 7.5 sacks. That's about half what Aiden Hutchinson had last year. Now, that's not a knock on Mike Morris. What I want to emphasize here is everybody is eating. Everybody is contributing to this team style of defense that Jesse Minter is calling. Looking at the numbers, they're better than they were a season ago. Having lost 2 NFL edge rushers, that's saying something. Rushing yards a game last year, 126. Good for top 20 in the country. Really solid, right? Well, 8 new starters, new defensive coordinator. They're now number 1 in the country, giving up 85 yards a game. Pass defense, gave up 204 yards a game last year. That's really good. Again, top 25, a very solid defense. This year, they're even better, giving up 177 yards a game. That's good for 11 in the country. And again, you lost a ton of key pieces. How is this 8 new starter defense able to be so effective? Well, Jesse Minter and the scheme is really solid. But the reason why I'm so impressed and why I think this is a dangerous unit and more dangerous than last year outside of what the numbers dictate, the fact that there's no star player, quote unquote, there's players you could say are stars, but no player that's really like that Aiden Hutchinson caliber, you're not star player / key player dependent game in and game out. Like when you're dependent on just one defensive lineman, I'm not saying this is Michigan last year, I'm just saying in general, when you have one star player as an offense, a good OC will scheme up against that star player. They'll say, okay, like Oregon last year, Kayvon Thibodeau, absolute stud for them. We're just going to read you all game long, man. We're going to make sure that you never have an impact on this game because we're running away from you, we're running read option, and whatever you do, you're wrong. That's not Michigan. That's not them. They don't have to have their star player have their best day to be able to win the game. They win with team defense. And I think that's going to help them going forward. This is no knock on last year's team. Last year's team was one of the best in school history, if you want to look at the numbers. But the new structure of this defense and the fact that it's more so a all parties involved kind of operation, I think that bodes really well. The team defense mentality is proving to produce some dividends. So if you're Michigan, you're excited and you feel better about your chances than you did a season ago, and the numbers dictate the same. Again, number 1 rush defense in the country, top 11 pass defense in the country. They're getting it done. They're getting it done as a unit, not just a couple of players being these star efforts as a unit, still with really good players. Now, here's the last thing, and this is potentially the most important to me when I look at this Michigan team. Last year, the mentality internally was they felt like they could. Everybody in that locker room, I would imagine, would tell you, yeah, we feel like we can beat Michigan. We feel like we can make the college football playoff. We feel like we can make the Big Ten championship. This year, it's dialed up a few notches. It's more so we expect to beat Ohio State, and they did. We expect to win the Big Ten championship. They'll play for it on Saturday. They're double-digit favorites. We expect to make the college football playoff. Even with a loss to Purdue, more than likely they are in. And that sort of mentality, that kind of edge, I think looks a lot like what Jim Harbaugh has preached his entire time since he's been there, and now it's finally taking shape. You preach something for a number of years, and there's question marks about, is Jim Harbaugh the right guy? Can this kind of style work in college football? Is he more of an NFL coach? They're sitting there ready to make the college football playoff, and they just took Ohio State to the woodshed for the second year in a row. The culture at Michigan is becoming more and more mature. No moment, no stage is too big for this program. Bruce Feldman told a story in the Rich Eisen show, I guess it was yesterday. He talked about being on the Michigan sideline right around the fourth quarter, and one of the defensive backs from Michigan gives this impassioned speech to the entire team and essentially just says, look over there. They're starting to put their head down. They're starting to break. This is a Michigan team that I truly believe has a superior culture and a superior hunting mentality that's probably second to none in the country. Them and Georgia are probably the 2 teams that I think when they smell blood, start to frenzy, and that's when they play their best football. They have this killer instinct about them. It's going to make them dangerous for everybody else the rest of the way across the college football landscape. from this Big Ten title game to the playoff and beyond. So I'm excited to watch this team, but the offense, much improved, more multiple, can win more fights. They're a team that walks into a fight, and they've got their right hook. They've got the run game, but they have that left jab as well with the pass game that can knock you out the further this thing goes. The defense, it's not full of star players, first-round NFL draft picks. They probably have guys that will play in the NFL for sure, but they play so well as a unit, play so well as a team under Jesse Minter, and they're not dependent on 2 or 3 star players having their best day. Now, it's still, everybody's got to do their job, but they're very much so playing assignment sound football, which sounds like a cliche because it is, but they're doing it better than anybody else in the country right now. First in rush defense, top 11 in pass defense. They're reaping the rewards of playing team defense. Then lastly, the edge. Like we already said, one of the best cultures in the country right now in terms of confidence and belief and continuing to prove themselves right. The expectation is to dominate. And so far, they've been really effective doing that. So Michigan, they're going to be in the college football playoff. Expect them to win the Big Ten championship. They're going to be a problem because I think they're going to get another shot at a team like Georgia. And that will be must-see TV. So Michigan, very much so the real deal. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.